Hello, welcome to today's session where we'll be walking through some of the recent changes and enhancements we've made with the latest release of Skype Operations Framework, or SOF. When this training was first released in April this year, the initial focus was on asset simplification for the plan phase. With the latest update for July, we've now included the deliver and operate phases within the updated consolidation release. As an introduction with a little background about Turgay and I, we're both architects within the Customer Experience and Deployment team and are currently active participants within the previous and continue to develop iterations of SOF while leveraging the principles of SOF across multiple Skype for Business online engagements. To obtain more information about Skype Operations Framework, please visit http://skypeoperationsframework.com. Note, Skype Operations Framework is a living framework, and as such, we strive to innovate and update the assets within to deliver new offerings on a constant basis. Your feedback drives the updates to SOF. Please use our feedback channels listed here to share your thoughts and ideas. We also have the SOF community as part of developing the multifaceted approach to SOF. We would love to hear from you on how you're applying SOF to your projects and share your lessons learned from the field. Please note this is the July 2017 version of this training, and due to the ever-changing nature of Skype for Business Online and SOF, I would like to point out that things may have changed upon watching this training. For the most recent versions of training content, please visit skypeoperationsframework.com/academy. What are the learning objectives for this training session? To set the stage, we assume that you've delivered SOF before or at least viewed previous recordings, so the focus of this session will not be a deep dive in walking through how to deliver specific SOF assets. With that context in mind, first we'll provide a quick summary of the assets that have been consolidated since the initial focus on the plan phase that was released earlier in April this year. Second, we'll walk through what changes have taken place and how to use the new consolidated asset supporting the cloud PBX, PSTN conferencing design, and migration workshops. And finally, my colleague Turgay will walk through the latest updates along with the updated document flow for leveraging the accompanying cloud PBX, PSTN conferencing design, and client migration templates, as well as the new consolidated assets contained within this release to be utilized within the deliver and operate phases. To begin with, why simplify? With the initial launch of SOF nearly over a year ago, and due to the fact that SOF is a living framework, the content and number of assets within have continued to grow over time. With that context in mind, the additional determining factor driving consolidation was based upon feedback that you, as consumers of SOF, have provided based upon how you leverage assets throughout your deployments. With that in mind, our focus for this initial release has been focused on assets specifically within the plan phase, with additional simplification efforts underway for the deliver and operate phases to follow. Note, we're not removing any specific content from within SOF as part of this simplification effort. It's more restructuring of assets and content contained within to make them easier to apply and consume. We'll now take a look at what assets have been consolidated and part of the simplification effort focused on the plan phase. To summarize the consolidation and simplification effort undertaking supporting the plan phase, the first thing you'll notice is that no content has gone away, resulting in a fewer number of higher quality assets instead that can be consumed supporting your deployment. Additionally, compared to the number of individual assets that existed previously, with this new simplification approach, you now have a single place to capture decisions taken as assets are consumed supporting the plan phase of your deployment. We'll now shift focus on the specific assets we'll be covering within the remainder of this session based upon the journeys available and specifically how the assets supporting those journeys have been consolidated. As you'll see, with maintaining the same focus for journeys possible, either based upon a new deployment or coexistence with migration of an existing implementation, what you'll see is that the expanded amount of assets that existed prior has since been consolidated, resulting with a single workshop and accompanying design migration document that can be utilized and tailored specifically to the particular needs of your engagement. I'll now talk about what assets have been consolidated in support of the new Simplified Cloud PBX PSTN Conferencing Design and Migration Workshop. With the initial version 1 release of SOF supporting the Get Deployed journey, the Cloud Architecture Workshop was used to drive the architecture and design and planning decisions required for deploying Cloud PBX with either PSTN calling or via Cloud Connector Edition supporting a greenfield deployment. For the version 2 release of SOF that followed, we released a new asset supporting a new journey around the concept of cloud migration. This focused on the architecture, design, and planning decisions required to either establish coexistence or complete a migration of an existing on-premise deployment to Skype for Business Online services. Finally, as part of the version 2 release, we also provided a new client migration asset that focused on the design and planning decisions required, whether you embarked upon the Get Deployed or cloud migration journey supporting your specific deployment. With that context in mind, what you'll see within the new Simplified Cloud PBX PSTN Conferencing Design and Migration Workshop is a higher quality simplified asset that's not only easier to consume, but allows you to drive a successful cloud deployment or migration journey based upon the specific needs of your engagement. Lastly, since clients migration has also been consolidated and part of this new simplified asset, a different audience may be required, so be prepared to factor this into how you schedule the workshop accordingly. Now, let's take a closer look with how the new Cloud PBX PSTN Conferencing Design and Migration Workshop has been restructured. From an agenda point of view, the first section you'll notice will include site-specific architecture decisions to be taken independent of the journey being considered, specifically focused around high-level architecture, authentication and management, along with network, licensing, planning considerations specific to the site. With that commonality in mind, depending on the scope of your engagement, you'll then see additional topic areas that should be leveraged accordingly specific to the journey taken. In taking the first journey focused on Get Deployed, you'll see that by completing common topic areas specific to high-level site architecture design, we then will change focus to specific topic areas relevant to the journey in flight, being Get Deployed in this example. Typically, those topic areas will include Cloud PBX with PSTN calling or Cloud PBX with PSN connectivity as deployed via Cloud Connector Edition. In similar fashion, if taking the journey for cloud migration instead, again, we'll start with the same common topic areas specific to high-level site architecture design, but then shift focus on topics relevant to coexistence and migration, specifically around Cloud PSTN conferencing, Cloud PBX hybrid with PS10 connectivity via on-premise, and cloud migration scenarios that follow. Lastly, independent of the journey taken, you'll find additional design and planning topic areas that could be applicable based upon your deployment being considered. Some examples of this will include voicemail services as backed by Azure, new features recently added like tenant dial plans and auto attendant and call queues, and then lastly, specific scenarios around desktop client migration. With this context in mind, depending on the scope of your engagement, you'll need to work through sections most relevant based upon the journey being considered. Now that we've reviewed the updated agenda flow contained within the new consolidated asset, we'll next talk about how to deliver the workshop based upon a specific engagement scenario. Prior to delivering the workshop, be sure to download the latest Cloud PBX PSTN Conferencing Design and Migration asset from the SOF website via the URL shown below. As you deliver the workshop based upon the new consolidated asset, the first section you'll begin with will be the initial architecture, design planning decisions supporting specific sites and scope. The sections that should be covered should focus on the architecture, end user authentication and management, licensing, and network planning requirements as required. Once complete, the next step will be identifying and delivering the cloud deployment or migration journey to be taken supporting your particular deployment. Based upon the journey selected, you'll next leverage the relevant sections within to drive the architecture and design decisions necessary, again, for specific sites that may be in scope. Finally, with the site architecture and journey decisions finalized, the last step will be identifying and delivering additional design or migration topics as necessary. Typically, those topics would include requirements for voicemail services backed by Azure, tenant dial plans, auto attendant and call queue specifics, and will also include deployment planning decisions to be taken supporting client migration. In summary, now that we've walked through delivering the Consolidated Cloud PBX, PST, and Conferencing Design and Migration Workshop, I'd now like to shift focus where my colleague Turgay will walk through what's new in working with the accompanying Cloud PBX, PST, and Conferencing Client Design and Migration Template. And with that, over to you, Turgay.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, now that you have learned how to deliver the Consolidated workshop with your engagements, let's take a closer look into the associated documents that you need to use as you go through the design activities. With the previous releases of SOF, we had authored and released a few documents to provide you technical details of the solution, as well as planning tables and checklists on each document so that you could capture the decisions made during your engagements. The first one was Cloud PBX Design and Architecture Guides that were designed for our Get Deployed offer. These documents are typically used when designing Skype for Business Online with Cloud PBX for a greenfield deployment, where no previous Skype for Business or Link server deployment exists on the on-premises. Then with the SOF V2, we released the Cloud PBX Architecture, Coexistence, and Migration documents. As the name implies, these documents were provided to be used along with the workshop that focused on migrating from on-premises deployment to a Cloud PBX deployment with Skype for Business Online as part of our cloud migration offer. Finally, the client design documents that cover the planning activities to design desktop client migration for Office 365 Pro Plus and encompass the action items and decision points required to manage and support that client deployment. These client deployment documents were applicable to both Get Deployed and cloud migration offers within SOF. Like we did with the workshops, we have consolidated all these 6 documents into one to make it easier to design your journey to a successful Cloud PBX deployment. With that, now you can find anything you need in one place, including all the checklists and planning tables. Like all the other assets, the consolidated design document is also available for download on the SOF website. Although we have updated the document structure a little bit, how you should use the document still remains the same. While you deliver the consolidated design workshop, work with the consolidated document to access more detailed information and practical guidance about the topic in discussion, and use the planning tables and checklist section at the end to capture the decisions being made during the workshop. If you are working on a design for multi-site environment, make sure that you duplicate the planning tables and checklist section for each site and capture the decisions made per site, as the requirements and the decisions might be different for each site. The consolidated design document is split up into a few different sections. The introduction, covering targeted readers, objectives, and a guideline on how this document should be used. The site planning process, covering all the areas where decisions need to be made. And finally, planning tables and checklists that you will be guided to capture these decisions into. You will need to refer back to these tables during the deployment of the designed solution. Depending on the SOF offers that you follow, You might need to work with the sections that are applicable to your journey, and the document is structured for that specific purpose. The first couple of sections, like user management and authentication, general network planning, licensing, and PSTN conferencing, are applicable to both get deployed and cloud migration journeys, and should be followed whether you are performing a greenfield Skype for Business Online deployment or migrating from an on-premises deployment. The greenfield deployment section is only applicable to get deployed offer, with deployments where migration is not in scope. Hybrid coexistence and migration section is to be used when migrating from an on-premises deployment to online. And the rest of the document covers planning for voicemail, clients, and finally the new features like tenant dial plans, auto attendance, and call queues that are applicable to both get deployed and cloud migration offers. So depending on the scope, you need to work with the sections that are applicable to your scenario and remove the sections that are not relevant to your deployment at all. At the end of the document, we have placed the planning tables and checklists where you may capture all the information and decisions that are being made during the workshops. The structure of the decision tables is very similar to the planning sections, allowing you to work only with the tables that are relevant to your specific scenario. Other than the tables that are brought together, there are no significant changes on the tables, and we continue to use the same methodology as already described with the previous trainings on how these workshops should be delivered. This specific slide is just a reminder of how the decisions are being captured, and we would like to re-emphasize that these decision points are the most important outcomes of the overall design stage activities. Okay, let's have a look at the list of the deliver and operate phase materials that have been simplified with the July update of Skype Operations Framework. Although the updates in the deliver phase are not as major as the plan phase updates, we have consolidated 9 separate assets into 4 main delivery guides that you can utilize when delivering your Skype for Business Online deployments. Basically, after the consolidation efforts, the delivery guides now consist of both the activity descriptions that talk about the duration and the resources required for a specific activity, and the actual content that provides practical guidance on how you should implement Skype for Business Online on your environment. The operate phase is no different. In addition to the consolidation of the activity descriptions and the practical guidance documents for all the materials provided as part of the operate phase, we have also brought together everything you need to know and do to implement call quality dashboard for monitoring the quality aspects of your deployments. Since with the latest updates, you do not need to activate CQD for your tenants anymore. Remember, from now on, it's turned on by default for all the tenants running on Office 365. We have consolidated everything related to CQD in a single workshop and a single delivery and operations guide. With that, by following these 2 assets, you can easily create custom reports and dashboards, or even use the sample reports provided by us. With the consolidated workshop and the document, now it's much easier to design for Skype for Business Online Cloud PBX deployments. The consolidated assets that we just published also cover the new features like call queues, auto attendance, and tenant dial plans. So make sure that you always download the latest assets from the SOF website to stay current. While some of the training recordings are based on the old document structure, the existing recordings still apply if you use the new consolidated assets. If you haven't watched the recordings before, please check Skype Academy section on the SOF website. We are actively listening to your feedback on how we can improve the Skype operations framework. The feedback you provide are even more valuable when it comes to the simplification, as we need to understand how we are using SOF and what we can do to make it even better. Please use SOF website to provide direct feedback to us. For further discussions, you may also participate in the SOF community. These are the overall resources where you can get more information about the upcoming SOF updates. Remember to subscribe to the SOF blog to get notified about our future releases. You may also visit the SOF Academy for trainings that are being made available with each release of SOF. With that, we would like to thank you for your time watching this recording and wish you successful deployments using Skype Operations Framework.